You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and then awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Hello and welcome to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza. And as always, I have a very special guest for you today. This is a show that's going to impact you on a lot of different levels. We've got a very experienced and very interesting guest in store today. Joining me from Ontario is Cindy Nolet. Now, Cindy and I have spoken beforehand here, and she's got quite a story for you and quite a lot of life experience that I think is really going to benefit you. So let me read in Cindy's own words here a little bit about herself. So as a close-up experiencer of a UFO at 7, it has allowed me to fast track my spiritual journey. I've been applying my work in energy and intuition with my hair clients for 34 years. Environmental energy work involves dowsing to locate and cure influences such as underground water that are negatively impacting our sleep or workspace. Since retirement, I'm now expanding my platform into an online presence. I look forward to meeting you in this space. So Cindy has been a hairstylist for 34 years, is now retired, and an environmental dowser, a feng shui expert, a personal coach, among many things, making the transition into the digital world. She joins us today from Ontario. Cindy, welcome to Decide to Transform.
Hello, Tomas. Thank you so much. I am pleased to be here and with this space of this digital life, which is where I want to expand. And I look forward to our chat today.
This is going to be a lot of fun. And we've spoken ahead of time here, and I find it very interesting. There's a number of things that are very interesting. And we'll talk about the UFO experience that you had at age 7 and how that's influenced you and your spiritual trajectory throughout your life. But I find it very interesting that you were a hairstylist for 34 years. That means you've heard a lot of deep personal information from people. And I know that a number of our listeners can relate to that in various walks of life. So, as you've been a hairstylist, you're now retired. How are you applying your energy work during that period of time?
Very interesting. So within my experiences of workplaces, I started out working for someone out of their home, and then grew into a salon setting. And
Okay.
my husband and I were married in 1997, and we quickly were expecting twins, and
Oh, wow.
realized that working in that workspace wasn't going to be valid for us anymore. He was my only support as our family was far from us. So we started the home setting, which was expanding on this personal experience of the salon client. So that was interesting because we didn't have ears around, and what was said was kept in private. And a lot of people share deep things. And I want to say that I learned a lot from their experiences just as a witness. And to your podcast, when it's the deciding to transform, I believe that I represent a smaller portion of people who maybe had an easier time transforming, whereas there are other people that occupy the percentage of near-death experiences and maybe something more traumatic. So I had the experience of just servicing and meeting people on a personal level, and both the husband and the wife and the children were always my clients, so I got to know them personally and as a whole, and found their own experiences to be very important to me, even if children were to teach me. So I had that in a home setting. It was great.
Okay. Well, this is really interesting because you make a really interesting point. There have been a number of people that have appeared as guests on this show who have had very traumatic and very abrupt transformational experiences. So, when you say that yours was easier, what does that look like? Uh, Easier. What do you
Easier.
mean? Yeah.
Well, there's the idea that, our life shows us certain examples, and we have maybe a soul mission to complete certain tasks.
Mhm.
And sometimes if we're not on course, there are circumstances that come up, like illness or losses, or scary things that would maybe prompt somebody to into what they're doing as maybe not the right trail. And for myself, as a witness to all of my clients' personal experiences, I could, put that in my memory bank and embody it on a personal level, because we were talking so deeply
Yeah.
that I didn't necessarily need to feel their trauma to be able to learn some of the lessons.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, it's quite an energetic exchange, and well, I mean, you're actually in physical contact with every single person that comes in, as well as deep personal space, and a lot of sharing goes on there, and I can only imagine some of the things that were said that you witnessed there. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and what is really interesting to me, and I think to our listeners, is that you had the UFO experience at age 7, which really shaped the trajectory of your life. So, would you walk us through that? What happened? Where were you?
Yeah, it was one of those experiences that it was quiet and personal, and there was no fright involved, although I was probably amazed and dumbfounded. um, I was at my grandmother's house, and my sister and I were somehow found ourselves on the back steps, standing on these really old-fashioned farmhouse of my grandmother's, and standing on granite steps. And out to the right was this beautiful silver disc that came in the summer sky with no cloud covering. It was as beautiful and serene, as quiet as could be. And somehow I was the one that managed to stay and have a longer experience, while my sister left us to go get my mother and my grandmother to come out and see this site. So standing there in this peaceful experience, the UFO had, you know, rested directly in front of me and just stayed stationary. No sound, no motion, nothing, that was scary or anything. I was just mesmerized at this beautiful silver disc. And just I feel like, there it was a longer time frame, but it was relatively unfrightening. So at that time, my sister was coming out, and this ship had kind of powered up, and the only sound that I could hear was such a clean engine sound, and there was never anything like that I could compare to, and it
Mm.
just zoomed directly away. And so when my family came back out, I was standing there alone, and I was the one that had this experience. So even though it was really big, it got packed away, and my in childhood was very unassuming, and we didn't, nothing really changed in my neighborhood with me growing up with all the other experiences. But I do feel like I was a little bit asleep through school. Like I felt like, though, that structure didn't fit me, and the whole growth idea of people with, telling people, the little ones, you don't have imaginary friends, or those kinds of things that get squashed when you're a little child. I clearly saw this, and nothing and no one was going to say I didn't see that or hear that ship. So it
Mhm.
always, made me curious, and always not to argue any points, but to always think that there's something that other people aren't able to see, even if it's in plain sight. There are so many things that are right there, and we were told not to see it, really.
Mhm. Mhm. I love the way you just put that. We're told not to see it. Right. We're instructed not to see it. And yeah, even though it's in plain sight. Okay. So now, why do you suppose? Let's go back to the day that you actually had this experience, and then You're the one that wound up having the totality of it. Why do you suppose that you were not afraid?
Well, particularly my experience wasn't scary because it was a beautiful summer day. My sister was by my side. My dad was working in the field. My mother and my grandmother were in the house. And it was a
Mm,
perfect, beautiful summer day. And the disc was beautiful and silver and shiny. And it just moved so slowly and so eloquently. It was a little bit of an intimate experience, if you were to ask me. Most of it was when I was alone, and intimate because it was just placing itself so quietly in front of me at a distance that wasn't up in the sky too high, but far enough that I wasn't going to be grabbed or reached. And there was
mm.
nothing moving or nothing. And it was beautiful in a blue setting. Right out of the blue, this ship comes, and it zoomed right away from me as quietly as it came, and imprinted me for a very, very long time and left me mesmerized and always in the back and ready for actually this time. And now I think it's come to the forefront more than any time.
Okay. Well, that sounds amazing, first of all. And it's interesting that you were the only one that had the full totality of the experience because everyone else was inside. And by the time that they arrived back on the porch, the ship was gone. So, do you have any notion of why you were gifted with this experience? Did that question ever come up for you?
Well, that did come up for me. It came up for me just last year when I decided to do a past life regression. And I've always wondered about this ship. And I am aware that there's technology that they are saying is more military, that these flying crafts were available even in Hitler's time.
Hmm.
And so I was questioning, was it a military? Was it, outer world? Why was this experience for me? So I pondered that through my life, and I had a hit just recently was like, is that, my future self? Did my
Oh,
Was it military or was it my future self? So upon hypnosis, it was the January 11th of this last year,
okay.
and I chose that date for a reason. And there was a good cosmic alignment for that day, and that
Hmm.
was, in the new of the 2020. So I had my hypnosis, and the lady was walking me through it and asked me, did you go on the ship? And I said, no, I was just on the stairs and I just watched this. So I was quite certain that I didn't go on to the ship, except for in my hypnosis I could feel my consciousness rising from the top of my head and going to the ship,
Okay.
but the little girl was still standing on the stairs, so my physical self didn't leave. And because the time frame was so short, but when you're looking into these phenomenons, they're talking about time and space being different, so it's not always
Yeah.
the same time frame as the experiencer.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
I found out a lot of things through hypnosis that made sense but
Mhm.
were weird at the same time. So I did have that curiosity as to why me, and I did feel like it was tools that I would need for this time and space.
Okay. Okay, I love this on so many levels. That would be a question that I think occurs to a lot of people is, "Oh, I just had this beautiful experience. Why me?" So when you did the hypnosis recently, just a few months ago, then years after the event occurred, it was revealed to you that in fact you did go aboard. Do you recall anything from that experience?
On a physical self, I always wondered if the ship had a line of lighting on the outer edge, and I on occasion asked my sister, "Did you see a row of lighting?" And everything else, I was 100% sure I would say it over and over again with no change in the story, except for the idea that there might have been a light, some lights, and it was like alternating red and blue lights. That was the
Mm.
only thing that I wasn't quite sure about. So in the hypnosis, yes, there was a row of lighting, and it actually
Okay.
was where it did actually show its lights to me during that time. which I was not aware as a little girl.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting, because there are, I think this is going to be of interest to a lot of people because there are a number of people that have undergone hypnosis and hypnotherapy and have learned all kinds of things that they feel like they've always known. They've always known. It was just reconfirmed for them, or confirmed more clearly. Yeah,
Mhm.
it sounds like what you're describing with that. I'm curious about what you said a minute ago about the timing of the reveal of all this. Now, this information will be of use to you. Could you say some more about that?
Well, I think we can all agree on a global level, this 2020 and, everybody being sent home to their rooms to think about our actions is a global activity.
Yes.
So, we called it the coronavirus and it turned into COVID, and whether it's a pandemic or plandemic, this home was happy because I had the instinct that there was something that was going to go down. I was well aware to watch the year 2000. I was well aware to watch, 2012. And I knew that,
Yeah.
things were happening on a subtle level, whereas the rest of the world said nothing happened. I was awake enough to realize that it's subtle. It doesn't, show up in neon lights. Although I did ask for my husband to show up in neon lights and he did. But
There you go. Right
but
on.
things so that's a conscious decision too, to be actually, involved in the process. So
Yeah.
this corona time in our house, I was happy to have everyone under my roof, without being
Okay.
fearful, but I realized that not everything is all roses and unicorns. So I kind of said to God, when hits the fan, I want my family to be all under the same roof. And they'll have one child going to this, the US school, another one was in Barbados. And so they can be everywhere.
Okay.
They're both 21 right now, so they're very independent. So then when they came here, I was in glory. I was gardening. I actually had the best, beautiful garden I've ever had. So basically, we had Corona time. We had the nice long summer, slice of lime and Corona, and just enjoying the beautiful skies that we could see. And those beautiful blue skies reminded me of how clear the skies used to be during
Mm.
the time that I witnessed the UFO.
Yes.
We haven't had always the glory of having such a blue sky.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the lack of air traffic. Yeah, it means a lot to me. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and the airport is very, very, very busy. There is often a lot of air traffic, and that's one of the things that I remember was a lot clearer skies.
Mhm.
So you had all of your family there, and yeah, this is it's like a global timeout.
Yeah.
As you were describing the experience, I just wrote that down. Where
Mhm.
do you suppose we're headed once this timeout is over?
Well, I believe we've already experienced the 2020 vision of what was said. For instance, my husband's workplace is corporate, and they're saying
Mhm,
you could never live, work from home. It's not possible. Well, guess who's working from home?
mhm.
He doesn't have to do the commute, and he was flying a lot.
Uh-huh.
And so what they said wasn't possible, we are seeing with our own eyes these structures don't always fit, just similar to my school experience when I was a little girl. You're in that, and some people are thriving. I did not. And so other people are thriving in their workspace. My husband's was not thriving, and so now we're
Yeah.
home and we can see that these kinds of things can be a thing. We don't
Mhm.
have to commute, we can work from home. So this is, this 2020 vision. We are
Yeah.
seeing with our clearer eyes now because of this lockdown.
Yes. It's very clear to every observer that a lot has changed. So we're and where we're headed, I think people can be all over the map on it, but we're not going back to the way things were in most regards. I think that's pretty clear. It's been quite a year, and you mentioned that certain structures didn't fit for you. For you, it was the school structure. For some people, it might be a work structure, a corporate structure, whatever that is. Now, After you had this beautiful experience as a girl with the UFO, have you run into a lot of skepticism in your lifetime as you've gone to share your experience?
I believe I sheltered myself from that conversation
Okay.
in in a broad range when I was a
Hmm.
little girl. Although when my sister, my mother, and my grandmother came out, they believed something big happened. They just didn't see it. And
Sure.
back to the hypnosis lady, I had asked her, "Is this like a hereditary phenomena?" Because my dad did believe me, and he says he's seen some kind of weird ships, but not that close.
Mhm.
And she didn't realize if there was any kind of like family lineage of this. But my daughters have had up close dreams, and they all intersect with my hypnosis and my phenomenon. Whereas they're dreaming of having visitors,
Mhm.
and even when I drew a picture of a being that I saw on the ship, I went to my daughter and I said, "Oh, I have this picture." She goes, "Oh, that looks like the one that I wrote in my journal when I was like 8." And I said, "No, you saw a gray. We talk about the gray aliens." She goes,
Mhm.
"No, it was cute like that." And it turns out we drew the same picture of the same little character that we saw on in her dream and mine on the ship. So it's always intersecting, which is my question. Is it a family thing? And I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I don't either. Yeah, and if you're out there listening, wherever you are, if you know the answer to that, would you email me? Yes, please. Tomas at tomasgarza.com. I'd love to hear your response if you have an answer. Is this a hereditary thing? Because I think a lot of us that have these types of experiences also have a family member or more than one family member that can can attest to that and have a similar type of experience. Call it paranormal, call it energetic, call it a download, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of that going around right now in 2020, all over. It's really all over the place. So, Cindy, you mentioned that this experience, as you describe it so beautifully and calmly and peacefully, really fast tracked you in terms of spirituality. Would you say some more about how that took place?
Well, just the curiosity. I was always curious. I love to imagine. I love to play outside. As a little girl, a lot of the outdoor time. And in my era, we did play outside. We didn't have, I hated video games. They're so frustrating. So you wouldn't find me doing that. But
Yeah.
I had reoccurring dreams of, UFOs flying over the house. And I had a reoccurring dream of always in a struggle with my basement light switch. Now, given that my parents bought a house with the deed of 1859,
Oh.
that basement had a lot of stuff and it was on a river, so there was lots there. But I attributed that to, the church vocabulary of evil. And so I was always switching this light switch and the color was always red. And years later, when I finally said yes to spirit, back to my hairdressing and using their experience,
Mhm.
this lady was discussing how she had a son that was really sick and the other kids wouldn't want to play in the basement. And I was on a mission to help myself meditate because was too busy in my head. So I found the paraliminals, the CDs that you listen to that balance your brain hemispheres.
Yeah.
And I had fallen across a course that was talking about the environmental energies that would affect the household members.
Mm.
So, and
Mhm.
then she'd leave and 6 weeks later she'd come back for a haircut and still say, her little boy has asthma and they're not doing well. So I said, I think that course is for me. So I said yes to this bizarre course. And if you had told me I was going to do that, because I was up until then really denying my role as an energy worker.
Yeah.
So I said yes to this course. And in this, you have to prepare your own home and do all your cures. And the one thing you're working with first is to make sure that your bed area or your office area isn't having the underground current of the friction of the water eroding the earth underneath you.
Mm.
And that was what was interfering with her son's sleep. So I said yes to spirit, and I could see the subtleties of what nature was telling us all along. So in the days when we put our homes in the earth by carving the earth out and putting the concrete foundation there, those energy lines were now bouncing off and ricocheting and getting trapped under our home. We never had that before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and this is something that, so then you began after this course, after saying yes to spirit, as you put that. I love the way that you characterize that, by the way. Uh, do you feel this? Do you see it? I mean, how do you determine how energy is flowing, being blocked?
Mhm. Well, the instructor that I had learned from in depth with all the courses that I added onto my bio, she was told, "No, you can't do this. You have to have the gift. You have to have the gift." And if it's from like, the ancient lineages, which is why I'm asking if this is hereditary, and maybe we have our answer that no, you don't have to have the gift. You just have to make the conscious choice of going forward, finding the tools and the language that works for you. And I use
Yeah.
the dowsing rods. That's
Okay.
what it is. And
Mhm.
back when I said that I occupy the percentage of people that don't have the trauma, I think this is very important because I would have run for the hills if you told me I was clearing spirits in some of my applications. But my dowsing rods will indicate to me, and I stay separate. I don't feel the trauma of track
Okay.
energies. I do not. I detect them, I'm able to cure them, but I walk away from it and I do have clearing tools, but I
Yeah.
don't see or feel the negative things. I'm lucky that way.
Okay. Well, this is something that's really, really important. And I think this is germane to a lot of the listeners that would characterize themselves as light workers or energy healers in any different modality. Clearing tools are something that comes up a lot. And it's very, very important not to take on the negative energy if you can help it. So, how do you feel like you're successful at not taking that on? Because some people really struggle with that.
Well, the instructions were to do your own home and all of the cures that you would ever do for anybody else on your own home first.
Okay.
So I think that's important because you're building the energy in your own living environment. And
Mhm.
our environment, our personal environment is very important. So yes, by doing those ideas, and then there's the tools that are, you don't need somebody. I don't want people to be dependent on another person to not allow themselves the freedom to doing their own clearing. You open up your own windows, paint is beautiful, freshening up of energy. You sage, you use crystals, you use salt water, you take a salt bath. All of these kinds of things are abundant and available to each and every one of us.
Mhm.
And even if you're an energy worker or not, these are tools for every human being on the planet.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's no debating that it's all energy and it's in motion and it can get stuck and create blockages and all kinds of things. So it's very interesting. Now, with the environmental dowsing, is this something that you're now doing professionally now that you've retired from being a hairdresser?
Mhm. Well, that depends on being up in person. So I was doing
No,
that
yeah.
all along. So I'm building my catalog of my clients and all of the examples
Gotcha.
through all of these years since I said yes. And it was about 2008 that I started to study. And my first application was this in 2010, which is this woman who had this underground water. And the
Okay.
instance with that, nature is showing us, because when I found on the edges of her property, and those are the ethics that you have to follow, is that you only do the edges of the property of the person that you're involving, not the neighbors. And their hedge had a giant gap out of it. And I said, "What's with the hedge?" She goes, "Oh, that never grew before." So this energy line was roaring through the hedge, and it was continuing on to her house and into her smallest child's bedroom and under his crib. So when we bounce that water off the foundation, it's a little bit different than feng shui when you move your bed away from the water, which is
Mhm.
a great idea. But unless you know that you haven't moved your bed to another water line, then you're kind of guessing. So in this discipline that I'm using, we're using copper rods as almost acupuncture points to bounce the water away from the foundation, just to aid
Okay.
the people that live there. And so then after the little boy, he felt so much better that she took him off his asthma medicine.
Okay.
as a
Yeah.
nurse. She did
Wow.
that. Hmm.
All right. Yeah. And well, I mean, you just answered the question I was going to ask, which was, all right, so how have people seen some benefit from that? So yeah, that's most definitely a benefit, taking them off asthma medication.
Well, the disclaimer is his body was more than apt to heal himself. He just needed some good night's sleep and not the friction of the vibration that doesn't fit the human body.
Hmm.
Water fits another place, but not under his little crib. So
Okay.
we have the miracle of our own body and our healing modalities of ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, this is a really important point that often comes up, and I'm glad it comes up because it's really critical is that each one of us has the ability to heal ourselves. Really, someone else isn't healing us. We're doing it, we're allowing it. Yeah, I love
That
that.
fits in with, the deciding to transform. Like
Hmm.
your conscious decision starts with yourself.
It does. And it really does start with a choice. And something that you've said several times that I'd love to talk more about is saying yes to spirit. I've, as we've been talking, I've written that one down and circled it. So let's talk a little bit about that. Are you aware of a single point where you did say yes? Where were you? What did that look like?
That was this year when I retired.
All right.
Yes. Well, years ago, we had the joy of building a home in the country,
Okay.
and in that, I had all the feng shui, attributes of angling the house to my husband's, money making number, and we built this home together. And I had thought, well, surely to goodness, my clients aren't following me here, and so not really worried about money. My personality is not really like that. I'm a little more free thinking. It's kind of irritating for my husband, who is the opposite and is
Mhm.
good with money. But all of those clients showed up, and I was working 40 hours a week in the basement doing hair. And I thought, oh, well, that's not really what I thought was going to, happen. So I was sliding these applications in between hair and family and, growing family
Mhm.
and all the business of two girls. But I didn't really say no. I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes to spirit during that time. And that was August 31st on the blue moon of 2012. We moved into our house, and I did not say yes to spirit back then. So now with 2020 and everybody, going in lockdown and now working from my home and having people coming in with the different mindsets of, are we going to be sick? Are you going to be, able to do my hair? And so with my husband needing the office and the kids needing the internet, I did decide to retire, even though I have a home-based salon. And during that, I felt bad because they maybe feel abandoned from me, but I did have to say yes to spirit. And being a hairdresser, you're friends with everyone, and you can't say yes to some and no to others. And
Mhm.
even my first boss had to move towns because her friends always wanted her to do her hair. She had to move away just so she could truly retire. So I don't want people to think that I took, the easy route by retiring and being afraid of the virus. But,
Mhm.
in the background, I said yes to spirit because this allows all of this open space to garden and to harvest everything that I had out of the garden, to cook my food, to make those decisions, and to say yes to spirit on another level. And it is, me with my meditations, and I do receive intuitive messages, and I do have pages of, and I don't want to say channeling, but information that comes through,
Yeah.
and I put it down on paper.
Mhm.
And because of this new time and space, I did say yes, and it has opened up a lot more for me, and it's fun.
Yes. I love that. And you're right. It is fun. It's fun, full of all kinds of new possibilities. So, do you have, once this lockdown is over, once this pandemic is over, and it will eventually end, those listening, if you're listening 4 or 5 years from now, we're recording this podcast on the 22nd of December, 2020. And as you look back in recent history, you'll know that this is during the coronavirus pandemic that struck the entire world just a few months ago and has changed everything, as we've been discussing. So we thank you in advance for listening years from now. which
Mhm.
is one of the cool things about podcasts. But anyway, Cindy, I digress. What are your plans for after this is all over?
Well, I thank Spirit in advance for letting this happen because this is what we all needed to shift consciously.
Yeah.
And it's like one,
Yep.
where one goes, we go. And with the conjunction and the energy of this new alignment, we're moving into 21 as more of a humanitarian aspect,
Mhm.
whereas in 2020 was a little more like self-care and kind of hunkering down and just taking care of yourself. So I look forward now to ride this new Jupiter and Saturn energy of 21 in the age of Aquarius, this new world, to start being more in the out there and taking care of the we more than the me. I've always considered myself a light work supporter. I never
Okay.
wanted to be the guru. I was the one to help the person's role in a way to say, okay, so how is your living environment? What is your subtleties of your workspace and those kinds of things? So I guess if the energy is changing, we're all going to go with it.
Yeah, I love that. The Lightwork supporter. And yeah, not everybody is destined to be the guru, the soul teacher, the leader. There's a lot of different roles to be played that have just as much significance and just as much impact. So, yeah, I love that you characterized it as that. So, in your bio and materials, you talk about a concept that I'd like to ask you a little bit about here, and that is structured water. So, for our listeners who aren't familiar with that, what is structured water?
Well, when I moved to this next home, we inherited whatever we had here. So by going by past experience, I wanted the next new improved NASA, technology of the next water purifier ever out there. And it
Mhm.
turns out that what I found is primitive and it's been here all along and it's been in plain sight and we've forgotten about it. So this water device doesn't necessarily, we don't need it if we lived in nature and we could scoop our water from a running river,
Mhm.
which is what I used to do at my grandmother's house. I would well water. Oh, the smell
Wow.
and the minerals. So
Yeah.
structured water is basically what happens when the water is in motion and it, smashes itself against the curves and turns of a river. And within that function, it becomes alive. It stays alive, I should say, and it gathers within itself all the minerals that it needs to create the completion of its own mandate. Water needs to fulfill itself with minerals. So when we structure our water, we're able to have that. So the osmosis water takes things away from that. So if we were now to become the river, if we're drinking osmosis water and that water molecule doesn't have the minerals that it needs, it will find its river, meaning us, our body, starting with our mouth, and it'll start collecting the minerals from our body to fulfill the mandate of a water molecule. So
Ah,
structured water, it will pass
okay.
through us and deliver us the minerals. And because it's not clustered and clumpy like dead water, it has the ability to slip one tiny little water molecule into our cell through the aquaporin. And within the cell, this water droplet will drop in, delivering to the mitochondria all the minerals that it has, and we get an intracellular hydration. So
Mm,
when the seniors that we have are lined up in the hospital and 70% of their problem is the fact that they're not hydrated enough. Yes,
yeah.
they drink water, but if it's clumpy water and it's dead water, if it's been sitting around in a bottle, it's not filling the cell. So the bloodstream is getting hydrated, and but not the intracellular structure. So we're becoming dehydrated because water's not fitting in.
Okay.
Structured water does that because it delivers one molecule at a time.
Okay. This is very interesting. I've never heard this description exactly the way that you just put it. So I'm very interested in this. How does one then obtain structured water or structure it themselves?
Well, there's lots of many ways because it's primitive and because water is intelligent and knows how to do that. We
Yeah.
just need to have some motion, and there's many
Okay.
devices that we can use. Not that we should be using it, but because we live in a time and space where our water comes through pipes that are longer than 300 feet long, and
Sure.
when water travels that long in a straight direction, it's lost its motion. So it's lost its vitality. So when we drink it, it's been still, it's been too long. So, I
Mm,
mean, it was Rudolf Steiner that did the spinning of the water by hand.
right.
And there are devices that we can use. So I have chosen one that basically doesn't need any water filters. And it has been handcrafted by a man in Austria.
Okay.
And it's where some of that technology is still alive and well. And basically what it's doing, it's using sacred geometry, it's spinning the water back into practice. And as long as my home is small enough that it's not reaching pipes longer than 300 feet, then the water in my glass will become structured. And because it's not chemically enhanced, and I do not agree with anything that is increased with osmosis, with electrical current, it's the stability of that water molecule is very short-lived. So it's better just to spin it and use the natural primitive motion that water actually will
Okay.
adapt to quite well. So yes, the structured water is easy to maintain.
Okay. Well, this is interesting. Now, if someone is listening to this and they're interested in obtaining more information about this, where would they go?
I have left you a link, and on there, I am full disclosure, I am an affiliate. So if there's a purchase, I get a 10%. But I'm not a salesperson. In fact, I almost didn't mention the water to you today, which
Uh,
I need to step up because the water and the hydration are very important.
hmm,
So yes, there's different tools and there are different products on there. And that's how I found this. I said, surely to goodness, there's somebody that's been doing all this research that I am, because I needed to sell this concept to my husband. Being an engineer, he's trying to say, scientifically, how does this work and why do I believe you? So I spent 3 months making a spreadsheet of all the reasons why we
oh,
should have it. So the
okay.
site that I gave you has also done this work and offers different systems, and I'll say devices because it is a material product that you put in your home, or you go out to the river and you scoop yourself some water. But
Yeah.
until those days, we do need to make it easy. So I did give you a link there.
Hmm. And then let's talk about that link. Now, this is the link to your research journey, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. So let me give this link out here on the podcast. So if you're interested in following Cindy's research on structured water and the spreadsheet that you meticulously crafted, as you just described, so the link is https://wonder water device, all one word, wonder water device.wordpress.com, wonderwaterdevice.wordpress.com. And Cindy, how else, if people are interested, whether they're interested in structured water or whether they're interested in the work that you do with environmental dowsing and are going to do once the pandemic ends, how would people reach you for more information?
I have Facebook pages for both. The Wonder Water it's on Facebook. That is my easy way to update things. And to be honest, I'm quite lazy with that. And the other one is Ruby Vision Empowerment. And how that started was, I don't even know what year ago, but I had a past life regression. And when I was to ask what my name was, I had to say my name was Ruby. So
Okay.
in that, I had an experience of a past life, which led me to this energy work. And so
Uh,
I've named that Ruby Vision Empowerment. And again, that's to support others and not to be the guru, or because I'm not, but to support others in their quest for things that I've come across.
Okay, I love that. And so the Facebook pages then are Wonder Water Device and Ruby Vision Empowerment. All right, Wonder Water Device and Ruby Vision Empowerment, some of the ways that you can get a hold of Cindy and find out more information about what she is doing and the fascinating energetic world of environmental dowsing and structured water. So, Cindy, this has been a real pleasure to have you on the show here today. I've learned a great deal and I've really enjoyed our conversation. I want to thank you for joining me as my guest here today.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed every minute of this. Experiencing myself through another lens is something that I think we all should experience.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to give the space for people to talk about what's important to them. And when every time I'm interviewed as a guest, whether it's on a podcast or any other forum, I always end up learning so much more about myself. So I really, I'm glad to hear you say that. So, Cindy, is there anything else actually that you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
One more thing. I would like to offer a meditation
Okay.
for the listeners, and will always remain free. I believe that we have new Earth possibilities, and again, we'll talk about this time and date of the 22nd. So yesterday was the solstice,
Mm.
and the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, and this whole thing that hasn't happened in on that grand scale. I think it was 1623, the time of Galileo.
Mm.
So, but we're moving into like an Earth. From an earth sign to an air sign, and again supports this humanitarian aspect of more of a spiritual vibe. So
Mhm.
in this, I would like to show with us that we have within our own bodily structure sacred geometry and different means of levels. So we have our physical body, we have our etheric body, which is just 2-3 inches around our physical body. We experience that section of our body when we have goosebumps and chicken skin and our hairs stand up on end when we have our aha moment. When our hairs are standing up on end, they're reaching into the etheric body. In there is a blueprint for our next best self. It's
Mm.
next level blueprint structures to our next self. The
Mhm.
same thing
Right.
as when I didn't say yes when I moved that one time. I missed an opportunity to experience my next level self. With 2020, a lot of people are having the opportunity to experience our next level self. We are looking 2020 and seeing with new vision. So I actually have a meditation that will help us bring in this blueprint. And if we
Beautiful.
move towards it, we can access things like releasing karma and releasing the curse of the original sin. And no
All
longer
right.
do we need those residues of feelings of being suppressed. So I will have that available, and it's beautiful and relaxing, and we can use it two ways. We can use it to turn on a right angle to the sunset and have it for a sleep, or we can use it for the sunrise and use it to fuel our day.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That's really wonderful and then very generous of you. So a free meditation, which will be available as a link when this show is released. And the place to find this link will be on social media. Cindy, on your social media that you've mentioned, on mine, Tomas Garza, on Facebook. And the website, my Podbean website, is Decide to Transform, the title of the show, decide to transform.podbean.com. The link will be available there as well. So, Cindy, thank you very much for that. That's very interesting about reaching into the etheric body for our next level self. And everything that you've just talked about has been going on for some time, especially in the last year. So we're at an exciting time in human experience. There's no question about it. And we've really just kind of scratched the surface of that today. So I want to invite the listeners to please get a hold of Cindy, reach out on her Facebook groups, Wonder Water Device and Ruby Vision Empowerment. Great ways to reach her. Cindy, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a real pleasure.
For me as well. Thank you so much for offering this to all of your listeners, and the whole concept of deciding to transform. And I will dedicate myself to be more responsible with my role and show up a little more often, thanks to you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my pleasure to have you here. And really, that's what it's about for all of us, is showing up. And we all have a very unique role to play. So I thank all of you for listening today. This has been Decide to Transform, and I will see you all again very soon. Everyone have a great day.